In the 1830s, Lizzie Dean worked as a maid at the Sun Inn in Chipping, which is a small village at the southern end of the Forest of Bowland in Lancashire. She was popular with the visitors to the Sun, and particularly with one young man whose name, unfortunately, has not come down to us. Lizzie fell madly in love with the young man, and they became engaged. But then he jilted her and married another. The 20-year-old Lizzie was heartbroken, as you can imagine, and she took her own life on November the 5th, 1835, by hanging herself in the attic of the pub. In her Farewell, Cruel World notes, she asked that her body should be buried under the church path, so that her ex-lover would have to walk over her each Sunday on his way to church. But because she'd taken her own life, this was not allowed. And so poor Lizzie's spirit was condemned to haunt the sun which she had loved so much. Over the years since her death, her spectre has been seen on numerous occasions by people staying at the inn. The present landlord, Ted, has had 2 experiences when her phantom has roamed the inn. On the first occasion, he was alone in the pub tidying after the lunchtime session. He'd swept the bar floor and he'd got the dust and cigarette ends and matches into the corridor leading to the rear of the pub, when he remembered that he had something to attend to in the cellar. Propping the broom and shovel against the left wall, you see, Ted is left-handed, he went to the cellar. When he'd completed his task, he returned upstairs to resume his sweeping. But he was amazed to find the small pile of litter had gone, and the brush and shovel were now leaning against the right wall. Lizzie, the helpful soul, had completed his chore for him. His second meeting with the long-dead maid was more spectacular, if less conclusive. This happened late one night as he was locking the place up for the night. He was turning out the lights in the bar when, with a shock, he saw the figure of a young woman emerging from the room which had originally been the kitchen of the inn. He was able, despite his surprise, to see that she was wearing a long dress with leg of mutton sleeves made of black and gold striped material. She had long dark hair and a pale face. The figure crossed the lounge, and overcoming his initial fear, he sat down and said, "Now then, Lizzie, come on, let's have a chat with you." The figure ignored him, and moving slowly and steadily, walked through the piano and the wall behind it into the next room, the top kitchen as it's called. Ted hurried round to that room, but of course, when he got there and turned on the lights, the room was deserted. It was only some 2 years later, during the course of some alterations, that Ted discovered a bricked-up doorway connecting the lounge and the top kitchen, at exactly the point that Lizzie had vanished through the wall. I told you at the beginning of this rather sad little story that Lizzie was not allowed to be buried in the place she wanted. But the church authorities did partially relent. Her body was buried in the churchyard, so great was the love for her by those who knew her. And some years later, a stone was erected on her grave that stands there to this day. It tells the date of her death, and below it the inscription, "There is a hallowed sweetness in cherishing a remembrance of those we love." Let us hope that when our time comes, we may leave as much love behind us